of the conference. This first session is on the themes of identification and protection of national critical information infrastructure, and also on CSC's role. We envisioned this session part presentations, part discussion. So in the first part, we'll have presentations from 5 of our guests, and after that we will have time for questions and discussions. So I propose to start now, and I would like to invite Ms. Mirna Medica from the European Commission, DG NIR, to start with her presentation.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I would like to first thank the organizers, MKD, CERT, the Agency for Electronic Communications, and the Ministry of Information Society and Administration for organizing this regional cybersecurity conference. Cybersecurity and regional cooperation in this field is becoming more and more important, and especially in this nice location of Lake Ohrid. So thank you for that, and thank you for the invitation. I will give a quick overview of the attention given to digital policy in the Western Balkans, what the digital agenda for the Western Balkans is about, and our planned action on cybersecurity capacity building. So digital policy first emerged high on the political agenda at the summit in Trieste in July 2017. Here the Western Balkan leaders adopted the action plan to establish a regional economic area. And this plan consists of 4 pillars, of which actually one is called digital integration. The digital integration pillar focuses on digital connectivity, cybersecurity, digital skills, and digitizing industry. And all of them are in line with the EU's digital single market strategy. And the Regional Cooperation Council plays a key role in managing the implementation process of this regional economic area. In February 2018, the European Commission adopted the new Western Balkans strategy, and with the strategy, they announced the digital agenda for the Western Balkans as one of these 6 flagship initiatives. In April 2018, in Skopje, the first digital summit took place, regional digital summit for the Western Balkans. Here, as probably many of you know, the prime ministers, ministers, industry, academia, civil society all had the opportunity to discuss the challenges and opportunities of digital transformation. Then a little bit later in June 2018, the European Commission launched the digital agenda for the Western Balkans, which leaders of the region all endorsed. And in April of this year, the second digital summit already took place in Belgrade, which was again a very all-inclusive event. So it's now almost 2 years ago since we managed to raise high-level political attention to digital development in the region, and 1 year since the European Commission launched its digital agenda. The overall aim of the digital agenda is inclusion of the Western Balkans in the EU, the efforts the EU is making to embrace technological change in order to benefit from digital tools, improving citizens' quality of life. The Western Balkans are therefore included in many EU working groups and structures, and alignment of national legislation to the EU acquis plays a central role in the agenda. So inclusion in existing structures and bodies is already ongoing, and the Western Balkans are participating, for example, to the high-level group, the Digital Single Market High-Level Group, The ERGA, the European Regulators Group for Audiovisual Media Services, BEREC, the body of European Regulators for Electronic Communications. We are making progress in participation in ENISA, the EU Agency for Network and Information Security. And Commissioner Gabriel launched the ICT Dialogues framework, in which the region is kept up to date on changes in the EU acquis and new developments, and to discuss progress. And the next meeting will take place in Brussels on the 9th of July, to which all of the Western Balkans are, of course, all the authorities are invited. And finally, the Western Balkans are also invited to join the European Artificial Intelligence Alliance and the EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum. And the latest politically most visible action is the new regional roaming agreement, which was adopted in Belgrade in April this year. And this agreement ensures lowering of roaming charges from the 1st of July, and eventually abolition of all roaming charges by July 2021. And the new roaming agreement is a precondition for the preparation of a roadmap to facilitate lowering of roaming costs between the Western Balkans and the EU, which is also one of the aims of the digital agenda. One of the main priorities of the digital agenda is broadband development, because without strong internet connections, none of the other objectives can be properly reached. The EU earmarked last year 30 million euro to prepare for investments in digital infrastructure through the WBIF, the Western Balkans Investment Framework. And we have so far one ongoing project in Albania and expect at least 2 more applications to be approved during this current round. And the digital agenda furthermore addresses the improvement of digital services. E-government services can, for example, increase the transparency and effectiveness of public governance. Efforts in this area focus on the EU's ISA2 program for cross-border interoperability of services. Montenegro was the first to join this program, and others have indicated their intention to join as well. In addition, new e-procurement rules strengthen the EU's principles of simplification, transparency and competition. Some of the Western Balkan countries already implemented the rules, while others are aligning their legislation, and TAIEX assistance is available to support this alignment. And lastly, the EU e-health network is a voluntary network between national authorities. The Western Balkan countries are invited to take part in the network, which would support the modernization of health services. The development of digital skills throughout all layers of society is an essential part of the digital agenda. It can help close the gender gap in ICT and boost employability. Several specific measures are included. An example is the Digital Opportunity Traineeship. This exchange program gives students the opportunity to get hands-on training in digital fields such as cybersecurity or artificial intelligence or coding, and students can apply for this program through their universities. Another example is the yearly EU Code Week that helps promoting coding lessons in primary and secondary schools throughout Europe. The Western Balkans have already appointed EU Code Week ambassadors and to promote coding, and last year participation actually tripled compared to the year before. The digital agenda also addresses digitization of industry, which is important for overall competitiveness. Countries are encouraged to set up national digitizing industry strategies. Digital innovation hubs can support companies in their digital transformation, especially SMEs and companies in the non-tech industry. The hubs help companies to get access to specific skills needed to digitize products and services. Some of the Western Balkan hubs have already been mapped in an EU mapping exercise that took place in 2017. And finally, Startup Europe is promoting the participation of digital startups and scale-ups from the Western Balkans into its networks. Startup Europe is an initiative from the European Commission designed to connect startups, investors, accelerators, and universities through several networks. The next meeting, actually, of the Startup Europe network will take place at the Digital Assembly on 13 and 14 of June. The Digital Assembly is a yearly, actually the biggest yearly digital event in the EU. And the Startup Europe network will hold a meeting dedicated to Central and Eastern Europe and Southeastern Europe. So I would also like to invite you all to this, to participate there. Then another key priority and also a common objective for both the EU and the Western Balkans is, of course, online trust and cybersecurity. And this is why we're here, of course, today. The countries are encouraged to increase online trust as this is the basis for increased use of internet and online services. The Connecting Europe facility, CEF, actually has, for example, building blocks for trusted services such as e-signatures and e-invoices. And these are freely reusable in any European project. Authorities in the Western Balkans are also in the process of aligning with the eIDAS regulation, which would help to ensure that eIDs are interoperable and recognized across borders, reducing administrative costs and increasing productivity. When it comes to cybersecurity, roundtable discussions took place throughout the last year, and several CSRs expressed the need for more resources and technical expertise. We therefore firstly included the need for more resources into the letters that EU Commissioner Hahn regularly sends to the prime ministers of the region in order to raise the importance for the issue. And I'm very happy to announce here that we are developing a capacity building project through the EU's Instrument for Pre-Accession Assistance, IPA. And this would be a 4-year project starting next year. The overall objective of the project is to support the Western Balkans in increasing and enhancing their cyber resilience capacities using a rights-based and whole-of-government approach to better address the challenges of cyber threats and improve their overall security. The project will have 3 specific objectives. The first objective concerns legislative changes and strategies. It will focus on the implementation of legislation in line with the Network and Information Security Directive. It will focus on cooperation between competent authorities, on cyber awareness and hygiene throughout all the layers of society, and on private sector and civil society involvement. The second objective is to increase operational capabilities to deal with cyber threats and incidents. This involves establishing strong, competent authorities with clear mandates, increasing capacity of these competent authorities, increasing cooperation between CSRs, as well as international recognition and international cooperation. The third specific objective concerns identifying and strengthening of the protection of critical information infrastructure as provisioned by operators of essential services, to use the terminology in the NIS directive. This involves mapping of operators of essential services, strengthening the management and mitigation of cybersecurity risks, developing a framework to manage and respond to incidents relating to operators of essential services, and national and international cooperation between the designated CSRs. Based on the EU's Council conclusions from June last year, the European Commission is keen to work with EU member state expertise for the implementation of this action, especially given the fact that one of the main objectives is the implementation of the EU acquis, and member states have gone through this process. So in conclusion, the importance of digital policy is growing in the region, and with the digital agenda for the Western Balkans, the EU shows real commitment to support the digitization process. Cybersecurity forms one of the key priorities of the agenda, which leads to the planned capacity building project for the upcoming years. And I would like to close by wishing you all a very fruitful conference, where hopefully regional cooperation in this area can be further strengthened. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mirna, for your presentation on the cybersecurity capacity building project. I believe all of the guests share the enthusiasm and anticipation for this project to start, and we are all looking forward to it. We are quite interested in participating in this project. So that was the first presentation. Now we will move on to the second one. The national CERT is the point of contact with the International Telecommunications Union regarding collection of data for the Global Cybersecurity Index, and we have a lot of support from the ITU regarding participation in cybersecurity drills, which are essential for our activities, but more on the activities of the International Telecommunications Union. I would like to invite Mr. Orhan Osmani to present the presentation.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for inviting us. I'm here on behalf of ITU Regional Office for Europe. I'm from Cybersecurity Division. You can see that my slides are a bit messed up because of the template. So let's go to the next slide. Well, I went to the wrong slide. Okay. Okay. So this is the first slide, yeah? Okay. Yes. Which side should we take? This side. Okay. Okay, so for many of you who don't know who ITU is, because I think you belong to different sectors, like I heard in the morning there was a Stopanska Banka here and so on. So basically just to introduce to you that ITU is an international organization. It's part of the UN. We are the oldest UN organization, which is over 155 years. We have 193 member states, plus Palestine, which we serve. And our division on cybersecurity, we support 6 regions in the world, so one of them is Europe. We have the 3 different sectors. The radio communication sector, which deals all with frequencies and so on of satellite, and even the telcos who apply for frequencies, they go through that sector. Then we have standardization sector, which is ITU-T, and ITU-D, which is the sector I belong to, where we do the development. I think it's important to mention ITU-T because many of you maybe don't associate work of ITU-T, what happens there. So if many of you use SSL certificates for your servers to authenticate that it's your server and so on. So the first time that standard came out in ITU-T, which is basically came out from ASN1, which was developed together with ISO, IEC, and ITU. So I forgot to mention that we are the unique UN organization because we have also private sector members which help and also contribute to the work of ITU. So basically the standards development, even the development work is supported by the partners on the ground. And then also, past few years, we have opened up our doors to academia, where academia contributes with the research work in our standardization, development work, best practices, and so on. As you know, this is how ITU organizes itself in 6 sectors, but Europe region is basically, we are not like EU, say, who belongs to EU belongs, but in ITU, it's Europe region, we have 46 countries. The recent addition was, I think, Moldova and Ukraine. And under the Europe regional initiatives, there are a couple of them, but specifically our division on cybersecurity, we support this Europe number 4 regional initiative, where it's enhancing the trust and confidence in the use of information and communication technologies. Why we support that? Because we have a mandate. So ITU's mandate started from the VISIS, which started in Geneva in 2003, continued in Tunis 2005, and it continues to be our mandate to support the member states in developing and building the culture of cybersecurity. Then in 2007, there was high-level expert group gathered. They worked on this, they call it Global Cybersecurity Agenda, and it was adopted in 2008 together with a COP initiative. COP is Child Online Protection, which was added to the GCA. GCA is built on 5 pillars. Basically, personally, I think the GCA is a framework which can be used by many countries to push any digital projects on a national level. And basically now we have lots of talk about digital transformation. I think our colleagues from EU, they mentioned the efforts they are doing on a regional basis to support the digital transformation of the countries, which part of it is building the culture of cybersecurity, because no matter how much services we put online, if citizens don't trust the services, it's very difficult. And with increased ransomware and so on, it becomes very difficult people to trust those services. I mean, one example is my sister-in-law. I asked her, why you don't do online banking? She said, no, I don't want to do it because last year she got this ransomware, everything was encrypted, she could not decrypt it, even she paid, and then she didn't manage to get anything back. So, so basically, and even it's increasing much more, the ransomware, because now the companies are paying, so they are stimulating the people to push more ransomware in the internet. Okay, so the role of ITU in cybersecurity is driven by our objectives. Basically, the membership, 193 member states, they come together every 4 years, and they instruct us what are our domains or what we should do. So basically the objective is to build the confidence and the use of cybersecurity. Then what we need to do is basically support the member states, so to strengthen their resilience. So I mean, everybody now is talking about resilience, not anymore about cybersecurity. So cyber resilience is something which we have to look forward. And I think, but you cannot build cyber resilience if you don't build the foundations for it. And I think starting with a CERT, which is organizational structure, it's a good start, but of course, before you started to implement the national CERT and so on, you had to build like legislations. You need to build like standard operating procedures to adopt some kind of standards. You need to do capacity building, and this gathering shows you we are doing this cooperation on regional and international level. So later on, I will mention that we despite we are doing now regional CERTs, we are trying to go for inter-regional CERTs, which is, we think that it's something which needs to go to the next level. How do we do this? So our implementation mechanism. So basically we do through different mechanisms. So we do through project implementations. We do sometimes technical assistance directly, like the member state says, I mean, we had the recent case in the Americas. The member state said, our CERT services are down. We don't have the technical expertise to bring them up. So basically we go there and try to help them. So our role as ITU is basically to help the countries to build the capacity, so to move on their own feet. So basically, I mean, still on Europe base, you're going to see later on GCI the outcomes, how the Western Balkan is doing compared to others. But in countries like in least developed countries and so on, they don't have, they have only one person sometimes saying, I'm going to be the CERT. So it becomes difficult because they don't have the resources, they don't have the people, they don't have the facilities and so on. So it becomes very challenging, but we want them to come and move forward because they need to cooperate, they need to help, they need help, and so on. Then also we do information sharing through different sessions. We have like study groups in ITU where member states contribute, and also the sector members, they contribute through the study groups. They exchange the information, they build the best practices, and they work together. Of course, capacity development is a goal of everyone here, so we build capacity, we develop the capacity, because some countries already have something in place, so we try to build on top of it. We do partnership development. We work with different partners. When we started in 2007 to be more involved in cybersecurity, we had only one partner. And now we have many who are working with us because they see the value we bring it on the grounds. And also we are trying to work with partners like EU and others not to duplicate the efforts, because if one is doing, we don't have to do it twice. And also we do sometimes product development, for example, for countries who are least developed and so on, they don't have products such as, honeypots and so on. So we do help them to implement some small products and so on. But also we have products which are guidelines and so on to help the member states to be better organized and do better when it comes to work forward. So what do we do? These are some of our services. I think cannot be seen well here, but I think maybe the organizer will share the slides with you. So one, I'll not go through them because I don't want to, because it's quite a long list of things, but as I mentioned, we do capacity development, we do information sharing, but also what we do, we have a CERT program where we help the developing countries to build the CERTs. And also two key areas is engagement and awareness creation. One of the products in that area is the Global Cybersecurity Index, which is basically qualitative-based research, because we are looking for proof. We are not like some indexes, they just say yes or no, and anyone can say yes or no, and then somebody gets ranked high or somebody gets ranked low because they didn't answer. But we go more into details. And then we have the National Cybersecurity Assistance, where one of them is helping the countries to move on national cybersecurity strategies, but also technical assistance and so on. The GCI, I think for those who don't know, who don't participate in this, especially the private sector, so we started in 2013. We started with 105 countries responding. In 2017, 134, and for the GCI 2018, we had 155 country responses. And then we look into, basically the information gathered is around 5 pillars of the GCA, the Global Cybersecurity Agenda. We look into legal information, technical skills, organizational structures, capacity building efforts on the country level, and also cooperation, because we want also to promote that cooperation is also a key component to develop a national cybersecurity strategy, and also to build a national cybersecurity culture. In this work, especially on the questions, we had a number of partners who contributed to that, but we have also sometimes member states who contribute. So if Macedonian CERT is interested to contribute, we are opening, the list for contribution is open. We are going to revise the questions again, because from the past experience, and we got the feedback from the member states that some things were unclear. And basically, I joined in January cybersecurity division of ITU back, because I was in different division in ITU. Then when I looked at the questions, it made sense what member states were saying. So basically, we are reviewing the questions. They're going through the experts, especially through the study group management team, and also the members there. So they're going to probably change the question, make them much easier. And forward looking in the future, we hope this index not to be kind of pressure for the member states to respond in 3 months, but it's going to be like online. You respond whenever you develop something. So when you have something new, like new strategy or new law, you just put it in there, and basically it's going to be like kind of proactive index, not pressured by time. The only thing what is going to be by time is going to be reporting. Let's say during the cybersecurity month, we produce a report to say, okay, this is the outcome until this date. This is what is happening around the world. Okay. So these are some of the observations globally. So we see that quite a lot of member states are doing better. even the developing countries, like in Africa, least developed countries, even the small Pacific islands who are, very tiny countries, they're investing in that so we can see the progress. They're looking into the 5 pillars of the GCA. They are improving. So I think it's made quite a lot of progress since the first iteration of the GCI. And this is what is happening in the region. So, we have some good progress in Albania. In Bosnia, it's working towards implementation of the national network of certs. And why the network of certs? Because I think they have these three cantons or 2 cantons. So basically, they're trying to see how they can build this network on the national level to do better. And then they're working on the NCS, National Cybersecurity Strategy. Currently, it's being drafted. Montenegro has a national cybersecurity strategy, but which is very important is that includes the metrics to measure cybersecurity development on national level. So basically, they're trying to monitor what they're doing on national level and how the progress is made. Quite a lot of progress in Serbia. So Serbia also recognizes the critical infrastructure. So basically, they're working on defining and basically strengthening the national critical infrastructures. I think we are missing the bottom of Macedonia, but also Macedonia is making good progress, and they're part of this awareness building campaign, which is very important. I think it was launched by President Obama in 2010, and it's ongoing. So you have different chapters on Stop, Think, and Connect, which I think we should all be not only educating the society, but also we should start from home, educating our children to tell them, stop, think before you connect. Do you really need to connect there or not? I think this could be also applied for other things. For example, like stop, think, and act on something. So I think we have to be really careful what we are trying to do, because sometimes we are pressured from work, and then you see an email coming from human resources, we have to check your details, and if you click on it, you just get infected. Doesn't matter who you are. You might be the best security professional, but you might be infected because we act on pressure. So that's sometimes the pressure comes in such a way that we just make mistakes. So this is how Western Balkans is doing compared to average Europe, and these are the top. The green is the top 10 in the world, how they are doing on different pillars. Then the orange is Western Balkans, and the blue, or it looks black here, that's the average of Europe region, based on what we collected through the GCI. And we try that information to be as much accurate as possible because we verify the information member states send. Of course, sometimes it happens that the member state has an update and they send it again and so on. So, but in this information here, what happened in 2018 until August 2018. So I think you are doing pretty well on a regional basis. So I think you're doing better than average Europe, but I think there is still room for improvement because you can see the gaps you have on some specifics like the technical and also the legal and also organization. So I think you can do a bit better. Everyone is having problems on cooperation because countries, when it comes to cybersecurity, everybody is a bit on the edge because they think they have to share kind of confidential data, but it's not necessary. Cooperation is about working together if an incident happens to share the information. So basically you need help from other side. Why? Because if somebody is attacking you, for example, from Serbia, you cannot go and act in Serbia yourself. You need the counterpart to work there. Same goes for other countries. Like, for example, if somebody launches an attack from Africa, you need an organizational structure. So you need to create that cooperation. And we are pushing for that, and that's why we are having these cyber drills, which are kind of place where we gather together and work together. And also now we are introducing this interregional cyber drills, which we think is going to be useful in the long run. Yeah, so we have the National Cybersecurity Strategy. It's basically, we had a number of partners we work together. So it's going to be the next curation of it. We are having new inputs coming from Interpol and other organizations. So it's open. If you want to contribute to the developing of the guide, you think that something is missing there, we are open to it. It's kind of a good project because we had a number of companies working together. We had the private sector, we had international organizations, we had even countries themselves supporting this work. And we think it's a good place to start, even not only to build, because some of you have already national cybersecurity strategy, but maybe to review it, because I think cybersecurity is not a destination, it's a path. So we need to continuously improve what we do. As well, I think the minister in the morning mentioned that Macedonia did this CMM assessment with Oxford University and World Bank. So we work with both partners around the world. So we are trying to minimize the duplication of work. Recently, we had a workshop in Pacific Islands in Vanuatu, together with Oxford. And basically, I think we need to continue not duplicating the work, but just strengthening what others are doing. Okay, so third program, just it's in brief. So I'm just trying to put 4 slides into one. So we did a number of assessments. You can see we did quite a lot of assessments, about 77 up to now. We produced about 77 assessment reports, which are basically for the countries to start somewhere. So basically, most of them, they use those reports and to go and ask the minister or prime minister to get them the budget and start something on national level. So we did 14 establishment of certs. One is enhancement. So in Kenya, we are doing enhancement of the certs. So basically, they had the basic services, and now we are helping them to move forward into the next level, enhancing the services, like, for example, having cyber threat intelligence and so on. It's not very advanced, but still, it's bringing the country somewhere where it didn't have anything. When you have something, it's much better than having nothing. And then in Africa, now we have ongoing about 6-7 projects. And also in Americas, we had some requests came I think last week, about 8-9 of them. So we are talking to a number of countries. I think I can easily say that we have about 25 countries negotiating now on basic implementation of the CERT. So what we do is basically we help the countries to build the CERT. So we run the entire process for them. Of course, they pay something. Also, we pay something, but then we run the process. We run from the bid and everything until the finishing of implementation and closing of the project. Especially, some countries that have problems. Let's say in some countries they have problems of corruption and so on. So through us, they know it's going to go the project, so it's not going to happen anything. So they know the transparency of the project is going to happen through our rules and regulations. So everything is audited and so on. Okay, so basically, yeah. So regional cyber drills should be only cyber drills. So basically, as I mentioned earlier, we are trying to work together and build this. The objective is basically to create the networks of people. So they can work in the future together, but in the same time, they help each other to build the capacity. So we also bring partners there to help to strengthen the country's skills and so on. And I think it's a good initiative, and we will continue to run it through the years. And already we have. Okay, I'll skip this one. So you have been on cyber drills. So in 2019, these are the ongoing. So in Romania was finished. So next one is in Argentina. Then we have Malaysia. That is cross interregional cyber drill. We have Asia Pacific together with CIS countries. So it's going to be the first one interregional to see how it's going to run, but we think it's going to be fine. Then you have the Arab states cyber drill in Oman in October, and we are currently negotiating with South Africa in Africa, but it might happen to change in Africa. Okay, so this is just Romania. This was the. Okay, so cyber drills in 2020. We already have some countries who are already committed in 2021. I think I heard Serbia might be committed on region 2021, but in other regions we have some commitments already by 2021 to run the cyber drills. As well, we help the countries to develop their honeypot networks. I mean, we just put the infrastructure for them, we build it for them, and we help them to implement it. So it's kind of modified, customized dashboard to serve their purposes. In Kenya right now, we are implementing, I mean, we finished 30 sensors, so we are going for another 20. So by the end of the year, we're going to have about 50 sensors on national level, which is pretty high in Africa because many countries don't have anything. Child online protection is something which is important. It's at heart of many people, especially, personally, when you have kids, you always look into protecting children. I think it's getting better with time. We have quite a lot of parental controls, though sometimes kids don't like, especially my 16-year-old. She says, I'm grown up, don't control me. But I said, yes, you are grown up, but I have to control you. So, I don't have a choice because he abuses the internet, so I have to control it. So, and I try to educate him, and I think we should all try to educate our children. But as organizations, we have a responsibility towards children and families to help them to drive this initiative and make it relevant to them. Okay, I mentioned the study groups. So basically, we contribute, member states can contribute through study groups, also the private sector, those who choose to become members. And also there is study group, ITUT study group 17, where the standards have developed. So we have all standards, we start with X dot something, there's something related to security. One of the standards in that group of X standards is X1303. That's more about common alerting protocol. That is meant for emergency response or emergency alerts. But it has still to do something on cybersecurity. And then you have ITUR study groups where people speak about radio communication, securing radio communication networks. So I think securing satellite communication and so on, that's probably a more technical thing. Okay, so this is the ITU Europe page for events. So if you want to check what is happening on Europe, then you can visit this website. Okay, so this is the workshop which is going to happen on national cybersecurity strategies in Macedonia, I think this month. So if anyone is participating, so just for information, you can find more information on this website. If you want to contact ITU Office for Europe, that's the email up. If you want to contact our division, this is the email below, cybersecurity@itu.int. But we will share the information across, so we try to work together on this. I think this is all from me. No, I just forgot to mention the partners. So I said we started with one in 2007. This is now who we are working with, and not everyone is here. So if anyone is here and their logo is not here, I mean, please forgive us. But we try to work with everyone interested, so we are interested not to duplicate the work. That's the bottom line, because we don't have to waste the resources. I think we should work together, and I think this should be a global and joint effort, because cybersecurity is basically, because internet is our critical infrastructure for all of us, and who controls it? No one, but it's still critical infrastructure because everything goes through it. So I think we need to work together, because there are lots of bad guys and there are few of good guys. So, okay, so that's all. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osmani.
I'll block the view.
No,
so.
please take a seat. So we also have another screen. Thank you again for the very informative presentation that you gave. I must say that we are glad that we are part of the GCI index, and just one information that in the 2018 iteration, Macedonia is actually in the top group of countries regarding cybersecurity commitment. Of course, there are different indexes measuring different aspects of cybersecurity, but for us, we find the Global Cybersecurity Index of great importance and very relevant. Because this session is also dedicated to critical information infrastructure, and this is a very current topic, especially not just in the region, but also nationally in the country, because we are now, for this year, it is planned to identify or to develop a methodology for identification of critical information infrastructure. It will be very interesting to hear from our colleague, Mr. Dragoslav Stanijan from the Serbian National CERT, on their experience regarding critical information infrastructure. Please.
Sorry. Hello everyone. I must next time to synchronize with Zorfan because my 10 slides they show in one slide. At the start, the critical infrastructure, information infrastructure was recognized through the law of information security adopted in Serbia in 2016. The law has a range which measure must be implemented in order to increase the security of IT system, which institutions are competent and how they react. The law recognizes entities that form critical information infrastructure. These are institutions and companies that perform activities of public interest, institutions that process personal data, and companies that perform jobs of general interest. The main problem in this, because the many companies are recognized as IT system of critical information infrastructure. By the law, the responsible institution for the implementation of the law of information security is the Ministry of Trade, Tourism and Telecommunication, while RATEL has been given the authority to form the national CERT. Another important CERT is government CERT that are being made at the Office of Information Technology and E-Governance. The law also recognizes other state authorities which are also by other laws dealing with security in Serbia. Before passing the law of information security, the area of information technology was only covered by the law of the high-tech crime. This law was passed in 2005. It has been improved based on experience with new terms and conditions and trends in 2009. Also adopted the Budapest and Lanzarote Convention. Meanwhile, the other documents were made in Serbia, strategy and the law of, on critical infrastructure. This law regulates national and European critical infrastructure, the method of identification and determining the critical infrastructure, jurisdiction and responsibility of authorities in this area. When define areas that belong to critical infrastructure, we have respect valid recommendation and standards. Ministry responsible for a particular area are determined to identify critical infrastructure. The competence authority for the implementation of this law is Ministry of Internal Affairs. In my knowledge, working groups are formed in competence ministry, but I don't know what their progress and how much the institution is recognized in this moment as critical infrastructure. As critical information infrastructure is the part of critical infrastructure, we have several challenges in practical and theoretical work. Primary determining jurisdiction and forming crisis teams when the incident becomes significant at the national level. Also, other documents regulate this area in the international level, and we have started to make changes of the information security law. Passing the law of changes is expected by the end of this year. The first plan was the May this year, but other things. The biggest changes that we have, back to the slide before, are the recognition of ITC systems that are part of critical infrastructure. We are closer to the NIS directive and narrowed out the criteria that define which IT systems belong critical information infrastructure. The competence of the national CERT are not changing much, but we talk about that tomorrow. The new, also important things is that obligation of all ICT systems to provide statistical data on events that could affect the security of IT systems, as well as reporting of all incidents that occurred. Okay, thank you for attention.
Thank you, Dragoslav, for your presentation. It is very informative and good for all of us to see the steps that Serbia has and the national CERT of Serbia has taken in order to implement the obligations derived from the NIS directive, but also especially in the area of identification and protection of critical information infrastructure. Regarding this and other activities that are happening at this time in our own country, I would now like to invite Ms. Jovana Georgijevska from the Ministry of Information Society and Administration.
Hello, everyone. On behalf of North Macedonia, as a host for this regional conference, I would like to welcome you all and share with you the overall efforts on a national level that North Macedonia is taking in order to strengthen our cybersecurity capacities. So, to start with, I would like to mention the pre-existing conditions in North Macedonia, which were not that far away, actually. This situation accounts for the end of 2017 and the beginning of 2018. So, in this period, we had no official national cybersecurity strategy. So, there were some ad hoc activities in separate institutions and organizations, but there was no overall general framework to account for our national strategy. So the national CERT team was already established, which is the MKD CERT, and it has been established in 2016. However, the situation still remains the same because there is no obligation for constituents to do incident reporting. They are not obliged to do so yet. We had no legal definition of our critical information infrastructure, and for this matter, we had no definition of the critical information in general, not just critical information infrastructure. We had no single comprehensive legal framework that deals specifically with cybersecurity. But, however, there was some political will at the end of 2017 where ministries which are in charge of cybersecurity on a national level arranged initial cooperation in order to have some strategic actions done in the upcoming period. So this initial cooperation accounted the 3 ministries in charge of the national cybersecurity in North Macedonia. That is the Ministry of Information, Society and Administration, the Ministry of Interior, and Ministry of Defense. And as, let's say, a major driving force in this process, which actually works closely within those three ministries for defining the strategic actions, is the Agency for Electronic Communications and the National Center for Computer Incident Response, the MKD CERT. So we already knew that these conditions existed in our country. However, we did some initial assessment in the end of January 2018. This assessment was done in cooperation with the World Bank and the Oxford University Global Cybersecurity Center. And the idea was to evaluate and measure the capacities of all of the public institutions, but also the private sector, civil organizations, international organizations which cooperate with us in order to establish the level of national cybersecurity capacities. And this report, which was published in August 2018, was very, very helpful in the process of drafting the first Macedonian national strategy for cybersecurity. So right after this cybersecurity capacity assessment has been done, we officially established a working group which consists of members from the 3 ministries that I mentioned: the Ministry of Information, Society and Administration, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Defense, and also the Macedonian National Center for Computer Incident Response, in order to define the strategic objectives of our country. After this working group has been established and we started working on the first national strategy, we did some additional capacity building workshops in order to raise the awareness and start actually enhance the process of education of relevant stakeholders. So we had a conference which was held again in partnership with the World Bank and the Korean Internet Security Agency. So from that period onwards, we adopted, actually the government adopted the National Cybersecurity Strategy for North Macedonia, which is for the period between 2018 and 2022. And by the end of the year, we also adopted the National Cybersecurity Action Plan. You can also view these documents if you're interested, both the National Cybersecurity Strategy, the National Cybersecurity Action Plan, and the report which was done from the assessment with the World Bank are available online on the website of the Ministry of Information, Society and Administration. If you're interested, I can share with you more details. So, right after we did the cybersecurity capacity assessment, we had a general overview of the situation, which is divided in 5 dimensions as this model developed by the Oxford University Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center defined. So this was very helpful for us, for the cybersecurity working group, to know which areas are those that we need to invest more and which are, let's say, in a more advanced stage and we should only work to improve them. I would like to mention this opportunity, although Orhan from the ITU mentioned the ITU workshop, which is happening in Skopje between the 26th and 28th of June. I would also like to mention that the process of cybersecurity capacity assessment does not happen only at one point in time. We're continuously working with international partners in order to reevaluate and reassess the strategy that we set and the action plan, so that we have the opportunity to change and update and monitor the progress that we are doing. So the next stage of, let's say, policy level revising of this cybersecurity strategy and action plan will happen on the upcoming conference in Skopje. The topic is national cybersecurity strategies, and the region that is covered is Europe. So we will have participants from the Western Balkan regions, but also from other European countries, which will be present in order for us to review the existing strategies and frameworks for cybersecurity. As a result of this process, the ITU will deliver a report for each participating economy so that we can reflect and move forward with implementation and strategic objectives. As Orhan mentioned, the call for participation is available on the ITU website, so if you're interested, you can take a look, and I hope to see you in Skopje on the 26th of June. When it comes to the cybersecurity strategy, again, we divided the national strategic goals in 5 different areas. So these areas have been developed in coordination with the recommendations which were given to us by the cooperation with the World Bank, with the cybersecurity assessment, but also from our, let's say, national research which has been done, and in line with that, with EU regulation and recommendations for this specific area. So we divided all of the strategic objectives in 5 categories. The first one is cyber resilience. The second one is cyber capacities and cyber culture. The third one is combating cyber crime. The goal number 4 is cyber defense. And in the end, we have goal number 5, which accounts for cooperation and exchange of information. All of these goals are very, very important, and the actions within those categories. So I am very glad to be here today and talk about cyber resilience, because actually one of the first activity in the first goal of the action plan accounts for strengthening the capacities of our National Center for Computer Incidents Response. So this is one of the priorities for our national cybersecurity capacity building, and we hope to be working with a lot of national, other organizational and international partners to achieve this purpose. For cybersecurity capacity and cyber culture, of course, we have different measures which are taken in order to raise the awareness of the public, but also to include cybersecurity education on every level of the formal educational process, but also for information security and ICT professionals working in public administration institutions, private organizations, and other civil societies. When it comes to combating cybercrime, this division is specifically refers to the Ministry of Interior, because this institution is the one which is in charge for cybercrime, and they do have a more detailed cybercrime strategy within the ministry, which deals specifically with this subject. Cyber defense is also one of our key priorities, and in this manner, the Ministry of Defense is developing right now actually their own cyber defense strategy, which is more specific but still aligned with the national cybersecurity strategy. When it comes to cooperation and exchange of information, as Minister Manchevski mentioned this morning, sharing information and good case practices within different stakeholders of our national society, but also international partners, is very important. This is how we learn, this is how we learn from each other and then achieve greater results. So in every part of the process of doing the cybersecurity capacity assessment, in developing the cybersecurity strategy and action plan, and in implementing further actions, we tried to include as many different stakeholders as possible, because we all know that This is the first time that we have developed a national cybersecurity strategy. However, in the private sector, there are companies which already have more advanced, taken more advanced measures, and this is the opinion of this cybersecurity working group, that we need to learn the best practices, both internally from our country, but also from international partners. So we included all of the public sector entities in this process, the technology and telecommunications sector as one of the driving forces when it comes to cybersecurity, the financial sector, of course, critical infrastructure owners, academic society, NGOs, and the international communities. So we had a lot of help, actually, both from the European Commission by taking some expertise, TAEX support in drafting the cybersecurity action plan, but also from the World Bank and other institutions which have supported us throughout this process. The national cybersecurity strategies, apart from all of those activities that are mentioned in the action plan, actually has 3 priority areas which we are in the process of establishing. So first of all, we decided that we need a national ICT and cybersecurity council. This is to ensure strategic level decision-making is coordinated at the highest level. So in this national ICT and cybersecurity council, which has been established in December 2018, ministers of relevant ministries are members. Our minister Manchevsky is actually the vice president of this council. And this authority has already been established, but it's only providing the strategic level decision making. When it comes to operational level, we aim to establish a body with operational cybersecurity capacities, because most of the activities in the action plan are actually in charge of this body. But until this body is established, the National Cybersecurity Working Group, which consists, as I mentioned, of members from 3 relevant ministries, as well as the MKD CERT, are in charge of implementing those activities that are mentioned in the action plan, so that we ensure that even though this body is not established, the process will not stop and we will continue implementing these measures. And at the same time, we were aware that we do not have an official, let's say, documentation and identification of the critical information infrastructure. We have conducted a preliminary study in order to define the methodology for the critical information infrastructure in North Macedonia. So now we are in the process of implementing this priority activity, which is basically to identify the critical information infrastructure and other important information systems. So apart from these priority activities, which I already mentioned, we have a lot of ongoing activities, and one of them, which is very important, is the national legislation, because at the time of the assessment, and this is still true, we did not have a law for information security. So now we are in the process of drafting the first version of the information security and information systems law here in North Macedonia. The first output of this process should be actually published by the end of the second quarter of 2019, and it will be available for the public to review, and we would like again to gather comments and recommendations in order to improve this process. At the same time, we identified a need to invest in cybersecurity education, and we identified the problem of cybersecurity professionals in public institutions. I am sure that this is the case in a lot of the countries which are participating in this conference, because we do have some professionals, but we need them to be point of contact, the strongest point of our national capacities. So this is why, as Minister Manchevski mentioned, we're planning to establish a regional cybersecurity training and research center with the primary goal of training cybersecurity public administration workers. We have international cooperation with many organizations, as I already mentioned, and we're continuing the process of delivering different conferences and events in order to increase the awareness, but also deliver education for some specific groups. When it comes to institutional capacity building, the process of establishing institutional CERT teams is now being implemented, let's say, because we do have people who are in charge of cybersecurity incidents response within our government institutions, within most of them, but we do not have specific teams and they do not have the specific resources that are required for this process. Mostly, let's say, professionals who work in IT would at the same time be in charge for information security, and we want this to be separate and to target cybersecurity as something that is very specific, and as National Cybersecurity Working Group, we aim to provide horizontal aid for all of these institutions. The cybersecurity education and awareness raising, we are getting involved in as many activities as possible at different levels. So not only that we have activities during the cybersecurity the International Cybersecurity Month in October every year. We had done some campaign, both national but also in cooperation with the World Bank. But at the same time, we are trying some different initiatives for different groups, as MKD CERT has done in order to educate different stakeholders. So this is one of the major targets when it comes to cybersecurity training of cybersecurity professionals, as I mentioned. So this process is very important for us, not only to provide education and to strengthen the human resources capacities for public administration workers, but at the same time to engage the academic researchers and to, let's say, stimulate innovation in our society by establishing cooperation between public administration officers, but also the academic sector and young and prospective students who will actually drive the cybersecurity industry in our country and on a broader level. So yes, I just wanted to mention the international partners that we already had cooperation. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you can leave the last slide. So we are hoping to achieve greater results with the inclusion of more international partners in the future, both for the assessment and also implementation of activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Georgievska, for your presentation on the activities in the host countries. So I think that it was very informative, and especially for not just for our guests from international guests, but also for the guests from our own country to see what is the progress. And I do believe that we are all quite interested in working more closely and more dedicated to this, to achieving all the goals that are already set. So we come to the last presentation for this session, and after that we'll have a segment for asking questions and for panel discussion. As Mr. Dimitrievski said in his welcoming speech, that we are now moving from cyber security to cyber resilience as a concept, and more on this we will hear from Ms. Anna Maria Matic from EVIS Instruments.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Ana Maria Matic. Thank you for the introduction, Alexander. I'm very happy to be here today and share with you few things related to national cyber resilience. And I'm so happy that before me, the presenters have already touched the topic, so I will try to be even shorter. Because actually between you and the lunch sits me and the Q&A session. And actually, it's very interesting now when I was sitting and waiting my turn for the presentation to see that we women in cyber are outnumbering today the men present in the panel, and that's a great thing, even when we speak about resilience. Because resilience is at first a natural thing, and if we think how it works in nature, when we have a storm, for example, and specifically I choose the picture today, trees don't fall, trees don't disappear when we have storms. They tend to bend and then come back when the wind is blowing. Therefore, when we come back to speak about cyber resilience, it's not only a thing that came natural, but it's also a cultural shift. And why I'm saying that, it's because one of the speakers before said that, yes, it's nice to speak about cyber resilience, but as the foundation, first we spoke about cybersecurity. And I believe that the point in time when we started to look at the resilience as the next step was a sign of maturity, first of all. It meant the fact that businesses, it doesn't matter if public or private ones, were ready to acknowledge the fact that cybersecurity is no longer a lonely island. It's actually a whole unit, a whole combination between cybersecurity and business that will give the final result as the cyber resilience. And businesses as well recognize the fact that attackers in general have nowadays the right tools and the right motivation actually to be successful in whatever they do, in whatever kind of attacks they are carrying. And for businesses it was very important to understand that being ready for everything is actually the heartbeat of being resilient. And I believe this comes as well from the experience that I have, that this was actually the path from cybersecurity to become cyber resilient. Now today, the topic of the conference, it's around national cyber resilience, national cyber security. And it's great to see, actually, in the last presentation, how many things are being done around the legal framework. Because in private sector, maybe the things are not so standardized and are not followed by the book, let's say. But when we refer at the public sector and at a national level, it's very important that, first of all, we have the right legal framework to do whatever actions we are planning. But I think the first question that came at the beginning was, can we actually have a national cyber resilience? Is that even possible? And when we speak about cyber resilience at the national level, after we finish with setting up the legal framework, the next step probably in general is to understand to what exactly do we refer when we speak about critical infrastructure. And that's, I believe that's the most difficult question to answer to. Because yes, we have the governments, we have the energy operators, but very often, at least in the Balkan region, which is something relatively new for me because all these years I was mostly involved in European projects, people tend to forget that we also have the medical sector, which is very important and very critical for a country itself to function. Now, if we think about a country, it's actually like running a business with few business lines. And medical sector, energy sector, aviation sector, even the airspace, it's part of a country, let's say, jewels of the crown, are all as equally important. So then when we are trying to answer what is the right level of, national cyber resilience, it's very important to understand which are the components that are actually contributing to the word of national. And all this story is actually supported by things that happen, let's say, in international context, not only in the Balkans, but I have as well examples from the Balkans. First of all, we are more connected, therefore more vulnerable. And I hear all the time, at least us here in the Balkans, referring to Western Europe or to Americas as being very developed nations, even in the context of cyber security and cyber resilience. Well, if you remember maybe last year, I don't know how updated you are with literature, but there was a very interesting thing happening at the Frankfurt airport. And you would think that Germany is covered from all standpoints with cybersecurity principles, cybersecurity practices, and so on. Well, a guy sitting at the airport waiting to board actually was successful in his attempt to access the airplane that he was about to board internal systems. So what do you think about that? It's a matter of cyber resilience, right? But from this example, I don't think that we can conclude that Germany is not a cyber resilient country. It's just an isolated incident that became public as well, but that shows us as well that things are being, let's say, approached at a national level when we speak about cyber resilience from international context as well. And we are all aware that, yes, a lot of new types of attacks are targeting businesses for money. If we think about ransomware, it's the first thing that comes into our minds. But the most important thing that they are targeting today is to induce fear, because people get scared. Like the example that the colleague had before about his sister-in-law that doesn't want to use e-banking. There are many other examples for people being already feared by the impact of a possible, let's say, fraud or a cyber attack. And as well, there was a very interesting statement made, I think, in 2018 at the Munich Cybersecurity Conference, where someone said that currently around the world we have more devices than people. And that's actually a very scary thing if we think about that. So devices somehow are overtaking us. And what we are doing on a daily basis, we from the cybersecurity world, we are trying somehow to overcome the adverse effects of misusing these devices. But actually we are already in minus because we people are behind from the number perspective with the number of devices. And another interesting thing is that, yes, we speak about national strategies, about national cyber resilience, and it's great, for example, to see how many things are happening, again, at the legal level in North Macedonia, in Serbia, in all the Balkan states. But it's very important to understand that, yes, attacks can target one country, but as a side effect, they are touching a lot of other economies. There is a company, maybe you never heard about, in Taiwan, producer of Taiwan semiconductor company, something like that. What happened in 2018, so last year, they were targeted by a variant of WannaCry. I'm sure you're all familiar with WannaCry. It's one of the most famous attacks that happened around the world. And how this affects us? Well, actually, this company is producing some components for the famous iPhones. Therefore, the production of the iPhones at that point in time was endangered by the fact that this company became unavailable. Its production lines were closed. So that's an example that it's nice that we look into our yard and we are arranging the grass, the flowers, everything to be nice. But it's important to understand what the neighbors are doing and how we can work with them and how we can foresee for the future potential things that can happen in the yard of the neighbor that can affect us as well. And I think that another very interesting thing is around Petya, which was another very famous attack in the context of national cyber resilience. Petya, you know, the whole story started in Ukraine at the tax office, which is part of, let's say, government and public administration. But at the end of the day, how many businesses were affected by that attack, you also know. It all went internationally. Private sector was also affected. So when we speak about, again, national cyber resilience, it's important to understand how this impacts as well the private sector. And what we can do at the national level somehow to protect as well businesses that are living from their own, let's say, private, some of them are producing something, so they are directly impacted by such attacks. And putting it in a context of cybersecurity strategy, it's great that we also have strategies that are addressing cybersecurity issues. But I think that, and I think that you all agree with me, the most important thing is not to set up the strategy. That's easy. And I think that all of us here, if we are concentrating a little bit, we can come up with a strategy for cybersecurity for the whole Balkan area. But the most important thing here is who is doing the follow-up, who is doing actually an effective oversight of this strategy. And you know, yes, it's great to define steps, but are we sure that those steps are properly followed? And I believe that these are the questions that are actually great to be addressed when we are speaking about national cyber resilience. Because, like I said in other presentations, probably the most important thing that we can do at the national level, and when I say we, it's a combination between private and public. I always say that this is the most crucial step into addressing security at the national level. The most important thing is to address the famous confidentiality, integrity, and availability triad at a national level. And that's the hardest task even for CERT, public CERT, as well for private CERT. It's a very hard task to accomplish. And sorry. I think that I'm pressing. Okay, sorry for the interruption. I think that the report that came out in January 2019, so this year, 6 months ago, from the US National Intelligence, it gives us a lot of, let's say, a brief summary of what we are speaking here today. Actually, the risk, the threat that cyber attacks actually are posing to, and the risk that they are implementing actually at the level of health, safety, and prosperity of a country. I was part of workshop this year in January back in Israel that was addressing cyber at the medical level. It was a workshop that was actually trying to understand how health as one of the most critical sectors in a nation's, let's say, portfolio can be better protected. And I have seen how people can be actually killed, being laying in hospital beds through cyber attacks. And you know, there was a very famous guy that a few years ago demonstrated as well how easy it is to, for example, penetrate magnetic resonance scanners, MRIs. And how easy it is, for example, from being healthy, that scanner to show that you are completely sick and you will die in about 6 months. And that's a very interesting thing, because if we think at the psychology of cyber attacks, we understand that if a specific attacker is targeting, for example, I don't know, a very important person in a country, it's very easy to do it through various means of attacks at the level of medical devices. And you will say, I know that we are far from that, But I'm not here to speak about what is happening today, because you all know what is happening today in your businesses. I'm here actually to speak with you about what can happen tomorrow and how these things can be prevented. And that's why I chose to quote from this report, because I believe it summarizes very well what will be actually the next steps into establishing a national cyber resilience strategy. And actually, we are speaking about legal framework, and yes, we have it, but it's about also starting it. And there is always the question, how do we start it? At which approach are we looking at? And I believe a lot of inspiration when we speak about national cyber resilience comes from the, let's say, everyday business in cybersecurity. It's a matter of approach. Do we have a zero trust approach, or do we have a defense in depth approach? When we speak about critical infrastructure, again, there are many constituents in this critical infrastructure. And I can tell you that currently, I cannot name even the country or the constituent, but there is some kind of interesting ransomware happening at the constituent of a critical infrastructure in some country in Balkans, and that puts them in a kind of isolation. Now imagine that this can affect not only their business. At the end of the day, they are a provider for services for all of us, the human beings, but actually it puts them in isolation because they don't have a clear plan how to recover from this. And that's a very sad thing, because we are sitting here today speaking about national cyber resilience, but in the same time this thing is happening. And it didn't start today, it started a few months ago. And they are still trying to resolve this. Now, coming back to the national cyber resilience topic, I believe that this is the place where community has to involve and to understand how in the future to address these topics in order to avoid them happening. Now, obviously, the incident will be solved at some point in time, but it's very important to learn from this and to know that things can happen even in the, let's say, areas of the critical infrastructure sector where we believe that, okay, nothing will happen. Things can happen everywhere. And when I say that one of the things when we start about speaking national cyber resilience, it's about knowing, it's about left hand knowing what right hand is doing, it's exactly referring to this example. I don't know how many of you know in this room about the attack that this company has been exposed to. I believe that not many of you. So it's, I think communication is a key thing when we speak about not only cyber resilience, even cyber security. It's a fundamental thing. That's why I'm always saying that, yes, national cyber resilience, it's a matter of state security. It's a matter of first securing the portfolio of constituents of a nation, but it's very, very important to learn from example from the private sector. You know, in private sector, things are happening much faster all the time because companies are so much connected internationally that they need to keep pace with what is happening at their headquarters, with what is happening with their business partners, and so on. And it's very important as well to have a clear roadmap. What are we going to do next year? What are we going to do in 2 years from now? We are all speaking about cybersecurity awareness. And I give you an example right now that shows that awareness is important, but it's something that you cannot really measure. One of the clients that we work with, a very good one in respect to cybersecurity, let's say technologies that they are using and their business and so on, recently started to work with us because they figured out that they did everything by the book when it comes to cybersecurity awareness. They did trainings to all of their employees, IT and non-IT users. They did even tests after these trainings to understand how they performed, and everyone was scoring maximum points. But they fell victim to, first of all, ransomware. Second, to a lot of phishing attacks. And last but not least important, to a kind of phishing attack that is in the category of CEO fraud. So they figured out something that is not a secret anymore for anyone, that security awareness is important, but it's impossible to measure. So coming back to the beginning of my presentation, I think it's important to understand that it's a matter of culture here, not of awareness. As you know, there is a fundamental difference between security culture and security awareness. Security culture means that we are involving people, or whoever is involved, companies, into the process. We are not telling them we should do that. We are telling them come and get involved. And this brings us back as well to the topic of national cyber resilience, because a state cannot do a lot of things on its own. That's why we always speak about cooperation. We always speak about let's be open to each other and cooperate, because it's great with the presentation that I've seen before me to see all the action items from the plan to develop cyber resilience, but and all these things around cybersecurity awareness. But if we sit like in school, in the old system where I'm speaking, I'm the teacher, and you're just looking and writing and acknowledging what I'm saying, there will be not much done. There will not be much done in the cyber resilience area. It's all about cooperation. It's about you being the voice as well, bringing knowledge. It's very important. The knowledge is very important. And bringing as well on the table the needs that you have. Every organization, every ministry, even in a country, has totally different needs. I'm originally from Romania, and I'm very proud of it. But aside of that, the beginning of my career, I spent it there. And I was part of major projects in that country related to cybersecurity. And I learned in this time that, yes, every ministry has its own needs, and also every ministry or public administration agency, doesn't really matter, has also different kind of teams, different kind of infrastructure that they need to maintain. That's why when we speak about cybersecurity awareness and establishing a level of resilience, it's important to understand these voices that are in the background and serve them the right food, let's say, for their needs. And that's why I believe that even for the constituents of a nation, it's very important to understand that there is a clear roadmap that the state has to involve them as well in this process. And as well, the last but not the least important thing for today in my presentation, it's important also to have an approach that is related to risk governance. Because I've seen this approach with a lot of enterprises. And if we all sit here and speak about national cyber resilience, I'm sure that we all agree that risk-based approach is also the right way to go into understanding where we are today and where we should or where we would like to be as a country or as a region tomorrow. And that's about it from me. Thank you very much for your attention. It's really great to be here today and tomorrow, and I hope that actually you will find value in the presentations that are being held here, as well in the workshops that are being planned for tomorrow. And I personally thank you to all the speakers, because for me it's really relevant content that I hear, and very exciting to see how things are happening very fast in the Balkan region. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matic, and please join our other presenters. So we come to the second part of this session, which is dedicated to questions of interest to all of us as participants in the event. So I would now like to ask you if there are any questions from the audience. Yes.
Hello. Uh, my name is Dane Krstevski, and I come from the National Bank of Macedonia, the central bank. I have heard many times from the minister, then from Mr. Orhan Osmani for the ITU, and also from Mrs. Jovana Georgievska from Ministry of Information Technology, that there will be some computer security drill, cyber security drill in Macedonia in 2020 in June in 12 months. Since we all have to prepare for the next year, can you explain a little bit more what is this drill? What is it going to, which institutions are going to be involved in the drill? What will be the topics and what is expected from the institutions?
Okay, can everybody can join? Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. So this is one of the announcements that we are also promoting during this event. We're pleased to announce that the next year Europe Region ITU Cyber Drill will be in Skopje, and we are going to be the host of this event. Again, it's a premier ITU cyber drill event focusing on developing capacities of incident response teams. Usually it's not just limited to CERT teams, but as we also witnessed in Bucharest last week, there were also teams from the country, from different organizations. It's an event that allows interested experts and people who are interested in cybersecurity to learn more by doing practical scenarios and exercises. This, as I already mentioned, is an event that we are looking forward to organize next year and to host it here in our country, in Skopje. Just as a introduction.
Since this event is actually far from now, the event that I mentioned in my presentation was the ITU regional workshop on European national cybersecurity strategies. So the event is aimed more at a policy level, let's say, but it will also target cybersecurity efforts in North Macedonia and throughout Europe. So this is an event that you can actually register to and attend at the end of this month, in addition to the cybersecurity drill.
The cyber drills which we run are on regional and interregional levels, but we hope that the countries, they will take it themselves and run national cyber drills. For example, like last year we ran a cyber drill in Argentina, which was national cyber drill. So we helped the country to develop their own program so they can do national cyber drills. But you, as being central bank, I would advise you to go and run financial sector cyber drills run by you. So basically you have the sectoral members, basically people who respond on incidents inside the banks, to be part of it. And also it will be good, like banks are coming together in most parts of the world, they share the information, they build common response teams, so they act together, because when a targeted attack on the banks happens, all banks get impacted, and in the same time the central bank gets impacted. So I think we are trying to build a capacity, but you are most welcome to join the exercise during the Macedonian cyber drill in 2020, where you can bring the team to learn there, but also if you need help from ITU to help you to run, let's say, the first cyber drill in your country on national level, then you can invite ITU, so we help you to build and to run that cyber drill. But basically the cyber drill is about a workshop to build kind of understanding what's going on. Then you have the exercises, which are cybersecurity exercises. You pose a certain scenario and you see how the teams react. But also we have kind of tabletop exercises for the managers. So basically, because the managers also have to respond to something, not technically, but they need to respond on making quick decisions to work together. So basically, if you heard the previous speaker, she spoke, the last thing is building the culture of cybersecurity. Not on a national, I mean, when you say on a national level, from ITU perspective, we see everyone. But some, they say national level, they think on the government level. But in a nutshell, everybody needs to be involved. Even the children at the young age, we have to teach them how to protect themselves. That's all.
Okay, so thank you for the question and for the answers. I would just like to add that last year we did organize the first national coordination exercise for responding to incidents. It was a tabletop exercise. It was last May. This year we can also announce it as the second will be held during September this year. So again, all of you from Macedonia will be invited to join us and to participate in that coordination, in the second coordination exercise. Some other questions?
Hi, my name is Nenad Vidanovski, GlobalNet. We have heard that there is a national council which is by the government, and the vice president is the Minister Manchevski. Since it is established in December 2018, do we have some knowledge how many times there was meetings on this level? I'm asking this from perspective of the private sector. There were too many cyber incidents involved with money crime and something like that. Is there any website where we can see some discussions about this? And
Thank you for the question. So first of all, I would like to emphasize the point that the National ICT Council existed previously. In December 2018, the idea was to actually expand the area of work of this council in order to include cybersecurity. So this happened in December 2018. As for the meetings and content of discussions held at those meetings, the only place where you can find this information at the moment is the government session. So it's the governmental website actually where you can see most of the content which has been discussed on those meetings. And at the moment I do not know the exact number of meetings that happened, but I would be quite sure to say once in every 2 months or so. But this council existed previously, so this number accounts for the year of 2018.
Okay, some other question? I don't think that we have any more.
Thank you. Good morning, Simon Uzunov from the Energy Community Secretariat. I would like to ask the first, since cyber attacks are, let's say, more practical, more common, and more, let's say, directly related to resilience and the protection, might not be really relevant where the council is meeting and when it's meeting, but what are the activities taken on the agency level or below on more practical terms. And in this context, it was not very clear to me when you mentioned there are going to be established teams that would practically deal with it. Well, when I read here, MKD CERT is Incident Response Team. So how would these new working groups differ? What are they different from the CERT activity? That wouldn't be bad to explain a little bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. So if we speak about North Macedonia, the idea of establishing this body with operational cybersecurity capacities is that we do not have, each institution does not have institutional capacities. So we want to build an operational body which will support all of those public institutions. In relation to the MKD CERT as the current National Incident Response Team, we actually implement it to be merged in a way. Actually, the MKD CERT will continue to do its duty, whereas the body will, with operational cybersecurity capacities, will be in charge of implementing some other activities which are mentioned in the action plan and do not refer to incident response. I hope that that clarifies the situation. If you have an additional question, you can continue.
Okay, so see, the thing is that you come from the energy sector. So I think there is a lot of need to be quite a lot of development when it comes to cybersecurity in energy sector, because energy sector deals with operational technologies, with OT. Macedonian CERT deals with IT. So I think capacity needs to be built also on Macedonian CERT to handle the issues and problems in operational technologies, and vice versa. Operational teams have to say, no, we are willing to learn, to work with Macedonian CERT to learn how to respond. So I think this should be kind of a loose marriage between the two teams, and people should help each other. And I think the Macedonian strategy is well developed, but I think that needs to be really looked from your side as well, to be willing to work together with IT. So, and vice versa, because we see in many countries that quite a lot of issues happen when you talk to OT guys which deal with operational technology, say, no, I know everything, I know how things run. But they forget that, you know, they are connected to the IT and they get infected and the systems are taken control by others. So I know the OTs are just on and off, you turn off, turn on, but then if you cannot turn it off and somebody controls the turning off, then it becomes an issue for you. So I think the team, Macedonian CERT, I think they have a good strategy to work in that direction. So I think you're in good hands. But of course, time needs to pass and you to work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, so we are nearly there at the end. I would just like to ask one more question, and I think that after that we will all go to lunch. I was quite interested in the presentation regarding the capacity building project, especially when we see ENISA stated there. All of the CERTs in the region are quite interested in that, and maybe you can just explain a little bit or comment, Mirna, regarding this involvement for ENISA in this project, maybe about its new mandate, because we are all eager from the region to cooperate with ENISA and to establish communication with ENISA as national CERTs, because that's the European Network and Information Security Agency, the top resource for trainings, for information exchange, for everything regarding cybersecurity.
For your question, indeed, cooperation with ENISA, I mean, I knew that this question would somehow come up, and we are as well very eager to work with ENISA, especially in this project. As I said in my presentation, we would like to have member states, countries, EU member states, to share their expertise within this project and help us implement the project. And ENISA would be excellent as a support there. As you also know, they have only by the end of last year received a new mandate, and the problem was until now, where they are trying to solve this problem of capacity that they have themselves, because like the last presenter also mentioned, capacity is not only an issue in the Western Balkans region, but also in the EU. We see that member states make a lot of use of the support of ENISA, and ENISA would like to actually extend their activities, and this is also partly, you know, why the new mandate was so important. So it's a little bit, like I said in my presentation, in progress, but also the EU Commissioner from DG Connect, Commissioner Gabriel, mentioned also at the Digital Summit in Belgrade that they are working on better cooperation, and I'm really hoping that as soon as possible we could establish more stronger lines with ENISA.
Thank you so much for the answers. So if there are no further questions, I would like to close this session, and please give a round of applause for our presenters for their participation. Thank you all. So I think that now we can go to have lunch. It's one floor above us at the restaurant in this hotel. So please join us there.